Welcome everyone to Ames Public Library for tonight's event with Ruth Harkin, featuring her book, When My Husband Ran for President and Other Short Stories. This program is brought to you by the Ames Public Library and Iowa Center for the Book, in partnership with the Ames Writers Collective, KHOI, and Ice Cube Press. I'm Megan, I'm the Adult Service Manager here at the library. Please consider joining us for our other upcoming Iowa Center for the Book program. Tomorrow, our youth selection for the Great Reads from Great Places program, 10 Beautiful Things, will be presented by author Molly Beth Griffin tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. in this room. And tonight, Ruth will speak, respond to questions, and will then be available for book signings here at this table. Ice Cube Press has her book available for sale in the back of the room. Tonight's program is being streamed live on Zoom and will be recorded and posted to the Ames Public Library YouTube channel. At this time, please join me in welcoming Senator Tom Harkin, who will introduce his wife.
Megan, thank you very much. And thank you all for being here this evening. My gosh, it's like being back home again. Seeing so many of our longtime friends here. Wow. My goodness. Brings back a lot of fond memories. This is where Ruth and I started our now 56 years of marriage here in Ames in 72 when both Ruth and I ran for office, and she won and I lost. It's been a sore point with me ever since, but I've kind of gotten over it. Not really, but I say that anyway. But it is great to be back in Ames, and again to see so many good friends here. I just wanted to say that this guy right here is Steve Simkin. Steve is the publisher of the book from Ice Cube Press at Iowa City. Does a lot of good publishing of books that you would like, and I hope you partake of. I just found out he also writes a column for Substack. If any of you are on Substack and read some of the Substack writings, right, Ralph? Okay. And he writes for Substack too. So anyway, been a great publisher. It's been great in getting Ruth's book published. So, well, I've been reading Ruth's writings now for over 40 years. She kept great journals all the time through our married life. And a lot of times the journals were more than just a journal. They were observations of people and places, things, events, that kind of thing. Even animals. I mean, pets. Well, they're animals, but all kinds of things. And so I enjoyed reading them mostly. A lot of them, some of them were about me. They were sort of her interpretations of me from her observations. And I would read them and I would wonder how she made up that fictional character. But then on second thought, on reflection, I had to realize, yeah, that really was me. Sometimes not in the best of light either, but all the stories were great, and stories about kids and family, places, meeting when we first met by chance in Tokyo. I don't know if she's going to read that tonight, but
I am reading that.
Oh, you're reading that, okay? But they were. I kind of wrote on the back of this, and I can't say it any better than this. Well, first of all, the title, When My Husband Ran for President and Other Short Stories. So I said on the back, I said, well, yes, I did have a short run for president. And in case you missed it or never heard of it, Ruth has captured the essence of it in here. Ruth's keen observation and pen makes ordinary people seem special and extraordinary. Sometimes laughable, sometimes heroic, and always endearing. You will recognize them in your own life. And that's what I think is kind of key here. A lot of even though they're people that she knew and writes about, when you read them, you think, I know that person. There's someone in my life like that, my grandma, my cousin, my kids, my friends. And I think that's what's so kind of endearing about the book. I will say this, this does not contain all of her writings. There's a file cabinet. So maybe, Steve, maybe there's a volume 2 in here somewhere. But I'm very proud of Ruth and her accomplishments in her professional life, but also in putting together these stories. They're just, as I said, very endearing stories. Not heavy political poems or things like that, but just kind of a nice look at people, places, and things as she went through life. So with that, I'll introduce my friend, my great partner, my wife of 56 years, your former county attorney in Story County, Ruth Harkin.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Tom, for introducing me, and thanks everybody for coming tonight. I had a lot of fun writing this book, and I wrote it over many years. And so I was so happy to meet Steve, who helped me put it together. And some of it, of course, occurred here in Story County. And and I really started writing it really for my family and my children. And then someone said, well, you may have a wider audience in this. So maybe we should talk about publishing a little bit. So that's what I did. So I'm going to read you. This is the first chapter, called The Perfect Job. My college roommate, Diane, and I had endless discussions about the jobs we would get when we graduated. These conversations were usually held over 3-2 beer in college bars around the University of Minnesota. Although Europe was our target destination, getting out of Minnesota was key. We had never been anywhere else, but surely there were places in the world where men appreciated us and there was no potential for snow in May. One day, Diane excitedly told me about the perfect job for us. The U.S. Army employed civilians to manage service clubs for enlisted men stationed on Army posts. There were several positions available in Germany, and one of the perks was an opportunity to catch free hops on military planes around Europe. We could vacation in other countries. It sounded ideal. The qualifications were straightforward: female, single, and with a bachelor's degree. I went for my interview downtown at the St. Paul Post Office wearing my best dress and heels. The interview was conducted by 2 career special service females in their 50s, which seemed quite old to me. As the interview progressed, they asked if I might be interested in working in Southeast Asia. You mean Vietnam, I asked. No, dear. This was 1966. No, dear. We don't send women to Vietnam. We were thinking of Korea. Well, that didn't sound nearly as good as Europe. Besides, Diane and I had a plan. The interview continued as we discussed positions in Germany. This opportunity was a real possibility upon graduation. I could imagine doing this job, and I think they could imagine me doing it. They would get back to me. On the way out of the door, on pure impulse, I turned around and said, sign me up for Korea. Then I hopped on the bus home and ran into the house looking for a map. Where the hell was Korea? Well, they sent me to Korea. And they sent me to a post that was 6 miles from the DMZ. And it is actually, our family just went there this summer, and it was a high security place then, and it remains that way today. Very high security. In fact, maybe even a little bit more so. So I lived in a Quonset hut with about 5 other women. There were no phones. We knew we wouldn't be able to talk to our family. They wouldn't be able to come to see us because you really could not get into this area as a visitor. You had to have credentials to get there. So, and our clothes were washed in a stream because there were just no facilities. Korea at that time was very, very backward in a lot of ways. But in the spring of 1967, I took an R&R trip to Tokyo, the largest city in the world at that time. Tokyo, with its many cars, was glitzy, clean, and modern. I checked into the Tokyo Hilton, the lap of luxury. This was quite a change from the long gray winter months in my Quonset hut. I made the most of it, shopping, eating, going to the movies. It was pure heaven. One afternoon, I wandered through the grounds of a beautiful Shinto shrine. They were having a little festival with snow cones and cotton candy. The cotton candy was irresistible, and I happily continued my stroll around the grounds, eating it. "Say, can I have a bite of that cotton candy?" I heard a voice ask. I turned around to see a great good-looking guy smiling at me. "Sure," I said, surprised to hear a Midwestern accent. "Where are you from?" We discovered that we were fellow Midwesterners from towns of less than 400 people, about a 5-hour drive apart. He was a Navy pilot stationed at Atsugi Naval Air Base near Tokyo. And I was from Minnesota, from working in Korea. When he asked, dinner seemed like a no-brainer. Our conversation at dinner was fun, and we bantered about Iowa and Minnesota, the war, politics, you name it. Toward the end of the meal, things took an unexpected turn. "You know, I live in a place called Dreamland," he smiled. I laughed. "Are you kidding? Want to bet?" We drove out to Tokyo down winding country roads in almost total darkness, except for the headlights of his car. What was I thinking? I do make impulsive decisions, but this wasn't reasonable. Dinner, yes, but not headed out into the countryside late at night in search of this dreamland with a total stranger. What could possibly come of this? Finally, he pulled up to a 12-story pagoda. He guided me through the lobby, and we took an elevator to the 12th floor. We walked through the suite to the balcony. "Here we are. Look down," he said. It was an amusement park, and there it was in huge neon lights, Dreamland. Well, of course, I got married. Well, not of course, we did get married. And along the way, Tom decided to run for president. And you all know that because you were all here. Now, I must say no one else in the family was very keen on this idea. I just couldn't imagine it. And the kids liked exactly what they were doing, going to school, and everything was fine. And this we knew was going to be tough if Tom was going to do this. But nevertheless, he did after we talked about all the pros and cons. Tom was very forceful, optimistic, and sure of himself. There's nothing subtle about his approach. He dismissed any obstacles I mentioned with a wave of his hand. After all, this campaign is not forever, he said. This isn't the '88 race where all those candidates began living in Iowa in 1986. Now, that is a good point. But just as I bring up the security and stability of Amy and Jenny, they bound into our room looking for all the world like two well-adjusted children who are happy, intelligent, and ready for everything. So the announcement of his candidacy is set for Sunday, September 15th. Lots of preparation goes into planning it, since this is a candidate's first opportunity to tell the public who he is and what he thinks are the main issues confronting the country. Because this is a grassroots campaign, Tom wants to be with his family, his friends, and his supporters in a down-home outdoor setting. We decide on George Mueller's farm near Winterset, the site of the annual Harkin steak fry and a place to Tom's hometown of Cumming. This 16th annual steak fry is none like we have ever seen. Over 80 reporters and at least 20 TV cameras engulf our family as we walk across the field toward the crowd. It's a sea of people, not only from all over Iowa, but from Minnesota, Wisconsin, Washington, D.C., and other places. The excitement and magnitude of the presidential race are becoming very real. At 2 p.m., the sun starts to break through the crowds. The band plays, the crowd goes crazy, and Tom gears up. He takes the stage. He's ready for the speech, and his 3,000 supporters love it. Jenny has a different view. It's too hot, and he's too boring, she complains. I want to ride horses. All things considered, it was a wonderful, warm campaign and send-off. And for those of us closely involved, the day had a historic feel to it. I did notice, however, that within minutes of the close of Tom's speech, Jenny was riding a horse and Amy had managed to find a steak. So much for awe-inspiring events for those two. Now that he's an announced candidate, we have a headquarters in Bethesda, and everyone is on the road almost all the time. But the campaign has a yo-yo effect. In some states, Tom is king of the mountain, but in others, he is barely competing. The press is everywhere. And at one point, a reporter shoves a mic between Tom and me and asks, "Does this bother you?" "Of course not," I retort. "It's the most natural thing in the world." Tom thinks this is hilarious. Don't ever lose your sense of humor. When we take second place in South Dakota, we feel pretty good. Now Minnesota, Washington, and Idaho have become key states. Bob Kerrey drops out and the delegates go on with 4 candidates. He's favored to win the Minnesota caucus, and our organization is first rate, and Tom is well known. But the day after the Minnesota and then Idaho victories, we are back to planning strategies with our executive committee. Our options are clear. Stay in the race until the Michigan and Illinois primaries next Tuesday. 2, stay in the race until this Saturday, the day of the South Carolina and Arizona primaries. Or 3, drop out now. There are strong feelings from some advisors that Tom should keep on going. How cannot be answered. We decide to stay in until Saturday and then reassess. My mother calls. She and Dad are excited about voting for Tom in Arizona on Saturday. He won't drop out before then, will he? I assure her that he'll be in the race through Saturday. But when he arrives back in D.C. on Sunday morning, even though there were many wonderful events, we know that we must quit the race. Now, we make arrangements for Tom's speech tomorrow. He decides he will give his farewell speech at Gallaudet University, the only such school for the deaf in the United States, in DC, and then fly back to Iowa. Not only has Tom attended classes at Gallaudet, but he also holds an honorary degree from the university. It's a symbol of Tom's work for the disabled and of what he thinks the role of government should be. We call key supporters and family around the country to give them all a heads up. And in many ways, our preparations parallel those of Tom's announcement. We are organized and in control. Dropping out of the race with dignity, honesty, and humor is our challenge. Jenny is upbeat. I'm glad you are getting out because I've about had it with this race. The auditorium at Gallaudet is packed with supporters and press. How they all came on such short notice is a mystery to me. Tom speaks to a standing room only crowd. For the last 6 months, I've had the opportunity to do something very special. It's been the privilege of a lifetime that this son of a coal miner and an immigrant mother could climb the ladder of opportunity and run for the presidency of the United States. It's been about human dignity and justice, and about electing a president who cares, not just for the few of us, but for all of us and for our dreams and our hopes for our children. Our campaign was based on the belief that America is not some at the expense of many, but many to the advantage of all. To invest our national treasure in the skills and talents of the young, to use government to empower and lift up, to give hope to all of us so that we can demand the best from each of us. That is what a visionary government can do. It's a bittersweet event shared with friends. We are saying goodbye to a dream and a campaign. Weighing on Tom is the thought that he has let people down by not being able to continue. Remind him that he has done well and that his message is now part of the political dialogue and that he has a long life ahead of him. We fly home to Des Moines where Tom gives his speech again. And although this is sad, there's nothing quite as wonderful as being loved in defeat, especially by those who have given you the most. We're proud of you. You did a great job. You didn't embarrass us. We wish it could have been different, but we're happy you ran. This is family. We return back to Washington, where Amy is waiting up for us. We talk about our life without the campaign. Tom will continue as a leader of his party in this election year, but I know his presidential race is over for sure the next morning. Instead of driving him to the airport, I watch Tom, Jenny, and Susie, our dog, walk to meet the school bus. I had always thought early on that I would choose a career that I wanted. And I knew you had to be in the room to make a difference. And a second guideline was really to do what I wanted to do. Most of the work and jobs I have done, people told me I couldn't do, and I never listened to them. And this has been very liberating for me. But as a lawyer just out of law school, I was hired to work as a legal aid attorney in Polk County, beginning in November of 1972. Tom was running for Congress that year, and Story County had just been added to the district. So this was a new district, and exciting that we had Iowa State students in Story County in the new district. So in May, as I was studying for the Iowa bar exam, the Story County Democratic Chair, Phyllis Glass, some of you may remember her, came to our house in Ames. Story County Democrats were notorious for not filling the ticket for county offices. She wanted to change that, and she asked me to fill the slot of county attorney. I haven't even passed the bar yet. And besides, I'm going to be a legal aid attorney right after the campaign I protested. That, my dear, is irrelevant. You couldn't possibly win this race. There are no women county attorneys in any of the 99 counties, and in Story County, there are no women attorneys except you. Not to mention that Story County, in over 100 years of existence, has only elected one Democrat who was promptly defeated 2 years later. I'm just asking you to help fill the ticket. Well, that pretty well nailed it. And I thought, this is such a small thing, no sense in even asking Tom about this, what he thinks. And I said, sure, sign me up. Well, against all odds, I won. The Attorney General sent us letters titled, Lady and Gentleman. Now, I was in the room, and it was a very good room, but I determined from the start that other women joined me. Happily, more women began attending Iowa law schools in the 70s. And a male student once said to me, I would really like to intern with you, but I hear you only hire women. That is absolutely true. I am the only woman out of 99, and if I don't hire women, who will? So that started a great career that I had over the years, and many, many successful times with my career. And after Tom and I both retired, we set up the Harkin Institute in Des Moines, and we now have a wonderful state-of-the-art, totally accessible building to people with any disability. So please come see it if you haven't already. And the proceeds, the personal proceeds that I am making from this book will go to the endowment of the Harkin Institute. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming. And I'm certainly open to questions if you have any.
All right, just raise, oops, excuse me, raise your hand and I'll pass you the mic. If you have a question,
Maybe no questions, huh?
there'll be one. I'll come up with one. There you go. Oh, sorry. I'm just doing this so everyone can hear you. It's pretty sensitive.
Tell us just a few of the challenges you had as a young Story County attorney among the 99 counties.
Well, it was really interesting because they had never had women county attorneys before. And so all of the dialogue, as you can imagine, was really talked about with women. But really, once I was part of the group, I was sort of accepted into it. And so the challenges were sort of interesting. And because there was a lot of press about me being county attorney and me being at the courthouse, I remember one time a man came in and had an appointment and came to my office, and he said, I just wanted to come in here and look at the person who has broken up my marriage. But because of your willingness to go out and to be your own independent person, which I can't tolerate, my marriage has broken up.
Grief.
Another time, well, I became pregnant when I was county attorney. And one day, unbeknownst to me, Tom had a bed moved into my office. So people were saying, what are you doing having a bed moving into this office? And so I could take little naps. And then later on, I took my daughter Amy to work with me because I was nursing her. And now this, you can imagine, drew some interesting responses from the men in the courthouse. And so I would sit down and have coffee with them, and Jenny would be in my old file cabinet room, and she was there, and here was sort of a statement about the whole thing, I think, really. And I walked in one morning, and these were judges and lawyers, and they were all sitting around talking, and they were moaning and groaning about this story about this firefighter down in Iowa City who was trying to take her baby to work with her. And they're saying, oh my God, doesn't that just beat all? Isn't that just ridiculous? Can you believe she wants to take a kid to work with her and she's nursing this baby? This is just way beyond control. I said, guys, what do you think I'm doing here? And they said, well, that's different. We know you. But there were a lot of interesting times, I could assure you. Thanks for asking.
Would you be willing to say anything about the Democrats' future in the next 4 years?
Well, I don't really know what the future is, but I'm getting ready for the next 2-year election.
Good.
So when you suffer defeat, you can only go one place, and that's up. So that's what I'm doing.
Well, you just want to talk about your writing process? Because some people in here want to be like you in that way. You want to start learning how to write also.
Well, what were you thinking about in particular? Being
like
part of
sort
a writer's group?
I guess kind of advice to aspiring writers and what you found that helped you. Anything from writing, maybe even to just the career that you've had, like what sort of guided you to
Right.
success.
Well, one of the things that really always guided my writing was Tom, because he was such an interesting guy to observe. And my favorite story, which I'm not reading you tonight, was Dining Out with Harkin. So Dining Out with Harkin is just observing every detail of Tom and writing it down. And he's never ceased to amaze me, whether it's getting surgery or whatever. He's really kept me on. But one of the things that I think inspires people to write is to be part of a writer's group. And where you meet with people once a week or twice a week or maybe twice a month, and you sit down and you talk about each other's writings, and you critique their writings, and that was very, very helpful to me. I was also when I was a young lawyer, I was thinking at a big law firm, I was thinking, I really ought to take an editing course because I'm really not a very good writer, a good editor. And I convinced the head of Georgetown Law School Writers Group to take me on as a student. So she came over once a week to my office, and we did a whole series of editing details. And after we got done editing, first of all, I became a pretty good editor, but then we started writing stories. And so she was very helpful to me in starting to write some of the stories I've written in this book.
You're really good. Here you go. Let me give you the mic so you can be heard.
I have 2 questions. First of all, do you know how many female county attorneys are in Iowa today? And then the second question is, when you look back over your time in Story County, are there any legal cases that really stand out in your memory?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure how many county attorneys we have today in Iowa. And I'm sorry, I don't know that, but I know we have a lot of assistant county attorneys, and we do have a lot of female county attorneys, a female county in Johnson County, female county in Polk County, right? I think. So it might be almost 40% or so that are female attorneys. And during one of my one of the things that was interesting, that when I was elected to this position with 0 legal experience, I had to hire people that actually had been in the courtroom and knew what they were doing. But at some point, I had to try a case. And what was interesting, so I selected a case that I was pretty sure I could probably win, and somebody wanted a jury trial. And so anyway, I tried this case, but imagine trying your first case and suddenly all the press is there writing about you trying a case. So happily, I won that case. But then I had other tougher cases that involved murder, rape, and incest. And one of the more interesting cases was not a case that occurred here in Story County, but occurred in Polk County, and it was where a woman court reporter in Polk County was accused of killing her ex-husband. And so none of the local people in Polk County could be involved in the case. So I was one of the people appointed to come in or to go into Polk County and to prosecute this case. So that was a pretty substantial case.
All right. I have tons of questions. I don't necessarily. Well, and this is me trying to make a story out of all of it. But when you think about because there's a passage there's a chapter in there about you and your grandmother.
Yes.
And I sometimes think as I read this and I hear you now and I think about what you've done since you knew her. I mean, is there something about what she may have told you or what she might be surprised to know about you now that you're here today?
Well, she was not too surprised at what I did, actually, and she was a very very decisive woman who had an idea about how she was going to live and what she was going to do. And she was always determined to do something. And I remember one time she was at her lakeside home and she was hoping to get her husband to chop down a tree that she'd been interested in having gone. And he was sitting around talking with his old buddies and laughing and whatever. And so she just went and she got an axe and she just cut the tree down herself and almost fell on all these guys. So that was something she always did.
Cool. All right. Well, and this is your last chance, everybody. Okay, here you go. Thank you.
In retrospect, with everything from when you and Tom first met, is there anything that you wish that you had done, or maybe any changes that you might have wanted to have made?
Well, I was very fortunate because in my life, opportunities kept showing up and presenting themselves to me. And I was sort of lucky to be prepared to accept good luck. So when it wasn't just the county attorney thing, it was being selected for other jobs. And so I was just lucky to have all of these things going for me and things that I could do.
You were lucky before that when you found that guy in Korea.
Yeah, I was good about that too. Yeah.
So what inspired you to become a lawyer? And you were at a time where women were starting to come into careers and things like that. So that was, most women of your age, I hear sometimes talking, oh, the only thing available to us was nursing, teaching, and blah. And you chose to be a lawyer.
Well, one of the things that sort of spurred me on to be a lawyer is because I was a social worker for Polk County. And it seemed that all of my clients had legal problems. And at the same time, I was married to a person who was going to run for public office and was going to go to law school himself. And we started talking about it. And so I just started going to law school. But it was really, I had never really thought about it before because I was really going to be like an English teacher. So anyway, I just decided to go to law school. And you're right, there weren't many women going to law school at the time. And of course, Tom and I going to law school together was a huge sensational thing. But most sensational of all, when we came back home to Iowa, we went to law school in DC. And when we came back to Iowa and we took the bar together, and we didn't really think about it all that much, but we took the bar together. And I remember going for a walk, and by the time I got back from the walk, Tom had a big banner across the house that said Tom and Ruth Harkin Esquires. And what happened was the clerk for the Supreme Court called and said, I was just so worried about one of you two not passing the bar that I went down and looked at the numbers. What they did in those days was to post your name and numbers on the door. And I looked at that and I thought, oh, thank heavens they both passed.
Well, okay. If you have another question, you can ask her while you're getting books signed, but thanks for being here. Thanks for Ames Library for holding this, and Ames Writers Collective for helping out, being a sponsor.
Yeah.
And books are in the back. Ruth will write a whole new chapter for you if you get one from her tonight. Minus the chapter, you'll get her name.
Thanks again.
Right, thanks
Thank
again.
you.